Hey everyone, this is John with Guitars and Gear. Let me start off real quick by saying I hate comparison videos. A lot of times they don't do justice to what you're trying to compare. But in this case, I'm just comparing some reverbs between different modelers. And in that case, I think it's probably worthwhile. And you're going to see throughout the video how similar reverbs can be. So what I'm doing in this video is I'm comparing the Quad Cortex reverbs against the Helix reverbs. I think the Helix, as far as modelers go, probably has some of the better effects built in. And want to just compare it with Quad Cortex. I've been getting a couple questions about the reverbs. And so I'm comparing 4 different reverbs between the 2 units, and we're going to see how that goes. Coming right up. Okay folks, hey, so we are back, and as you can see on your screen, we have the Quad Cortex screen up and we have the Helix screen up. So what I want to do is just go through the signal chain real quick on both of these, and just to let you know what we're playing through. So on the, if you pay attention to the Helix screen, let me take that reverb out. On the amp, we are using the Plexi Bright, and these are the settings you can see on the screen there. That's how I have this one dialed in. As far as the cabinet, I'm using my own IR, well, an IR that I have, and it's the P5150-212 Chef 12K API SM571. And there's the settings for that. If you pay attention down to the, or over to the Quad Cortex screen, again, let me dial out this guy real quick. So we'll take that stomp out. Okay, so as you can see, we have the amp here is a Plexi 100 Bright, which is the same amp model as what's on the Helix, and you can see those settings, how I have it dialed in. And then on the cabinet, you can see, can't really see the whole thing, but you get a pair of, you know, just what it is, but it's the exact same IR that I'm using on the Helix. So that's our kind of our signal chain there. So on the Helix screen, this is what it sounds like. And on the Quad Cortex, here's what we're sounding like. So that's the 2 bass sounds that we're basing all this on. So I try to dial it in as close as I can. Of course, they're going to be a little bit different because, hey, they're different modelers. But that's the gist of it. So if we turn our attention to the Helix, the first reverb we're going to go over is a spring reverb. So on the Helix, I have dialed in the 63 spring. All these are from the legacy reverbs. So we got to remember the Quad Cortex, or the, I'm sorry, the Helix came out, gosh, almost 10 years, I think it is now. Or maybe it's 7, 8 years, I forget. Anyway, it's been a while, right? Quad Cortex just came out, so there is a lot more reverbs on the Helix than there are on the Quad Cortex right now. So just with that in mind, I picked 4 of the reverbs that I thought best fitted each other between the 2 units. And so there's a 63 spring on the Helix. If we look down at the Quad Cortex now, I have dialed in a spring reverb as well. So those are the settings on the Quad Cortex for the spring reverb. Okay, so now you've seen that, let's go over the sound on the Helix. Now the Quad Cortex. So now let's go back to the Helix one more time. Just kind of getting that ring through there. And now on the Quad Cortex. If I did the same actual key here. So there you go. So that's the spring reverb on both. Again, here's the Quad Cortex. And on the Helix. Pretty similar, actually. Really good. Okay, so back up on the Helix. Our next one is a cave reverb. And if we go down to the Quad Cortex, we have a cave reverb there as well, so we can see the differences here. So back up to the Helix again, we have this. It's pretty crazy reverb there. Now on the Quad Cortex. So yeah, so you can kind of tell the differences there. Now back to the Helix one more time. And on the Quad Cortex. And our last one on the Helix. And on the Quad Cortex. So yeah, pretty similar there as well. So some pretty good competition by the Quad Cortex, I think. All right, so next up here on the Helix, looking at the Helix, we have a room reverb. And down on the Quad Cortex, I keep saying down because it's down from where I'm looking here. On the Quad Cortex, we have a room reverb here as well. So you can see the settings of the Quad Cortex and the settings on the Helix. And so now let's take a listen, starting with the Helix. And on the Quad Cortex. And one more time on the Helix. Kind of screwed that up. On the Quad Cortex. Back to the Helix. And the Quad Cortex. So you can see they are virtually identical. It's hard to tell the difference between those two. Now if we go back up to the Helix, let's do our last reverb. And we're looking at a tile reverb on the Helix. On the Quad Cortex, we are looking at a ambience reverb. So I found the two of these to be extremely similar to each other. So let's take a listen. You can see the settings, by the way, on both of those. There are different reverbs, really, but they do have some similar features. So we're going to hear that right now. Here's the Helix. And now on the Quad Cortex. So pretty similar, not exactly the same. Going back to the Helix now. And the Quad Cortex. And back to Helix again. And Quad Cortex. So yeah, you can tell they're very, very similar reverbs as well. So for anybody that was wanting to know the comparison between Quad Cortex and like something like the Helix or different types of reverbs or different modelers with reverbs, I can definitely tell you the Quad Cortex comes pretty close, if not, maybe better. It depends on your ears, really. I think they're both very, very good. So it's really, apples to apples, I think, here. The only difference, like I said before, is if we take a look at the Quad Cortex reverbs, and so looking at the Quad Cortex screen, and if we want to change to the different reverbs. So this is something I wanted to highlight as well. So right now, there's 7 different reverbs that you have on the Quad Cortex. There's ambience, cave, hall, modulated, room, spring, and spring mono. So really, if you want to really say there's 6 with 2 different spring reverbs, that's all you get. If you look at the Helix screen, on the legacy side, there's a plate, room, chamber, hall, echo, tile, cave, ducking, octo, 63 spring, another spring, and a particle verb. So there's a ton there, and that's not even taking into account the stereo reverbs that they have, those that are highlighted there, not highlighted, but those, and then the mono, same versions in mono. But pretty cool. But as you can see, if you look at the Helix, keep looking at the Helix screen, you can see I got 4 reverbs on that top line. And that top line and that second line is how they separate their DSP power. So the way I think it works is that one DSP chip is working on that top line, another one is on the bottom line. And I think that's how that's spread out. If you take a look down at the Quad Cortex screen, and if I get back out here, you can see these top 2 rows here where my fingers are one DSP chip, and then rows 3 and 4 are the other DSP chip. So something interesting about the Quad Cortex, if we take a look at our DSP power right now and how much CPU we're using, we're only using 32%, and we've got 4 reverbs currently there right now. If I try to add another reverb, you can see the only options I have are spring reverb. It won't allow me to pick any of the other reverbs, even though I'm only at 32% CPU power, which is kind of odd, and I'm not sure. Maybe an oral DSP can chime in the comments and say, hey, why don't I have access to all of them? I'm not using that much DSP power right now. And I'm on a different row, so I should be using different DSP down there than I was up top. But for some reason, even if I do that here and do reverb, now I have an option for an ambiance one and a spring and a mono spring. But down here, I only have the spring and that because I'm already using the ambience here. So maybe it won't allow me to use it twice. Not sure why that is, but if we go up to the Helix screen, you can see I'm using 4 right now. If I go down to the next row and go and add another reverb, you can see I've got option for all of them again. So right off the bat, I can get 5 reverbs. If I pick one of those, and now I go to pick another reverb, I still have option for all of them. So let's do ducking. Let's do another reverb. And I can just keep doing this until I start running out of what the Helix shows as as I'm kind of using up all DSP, but I'm still adding reverbs. So, it's just kind of crazy. So, even if I go out this path and go back and add another reverb. See, I can just do this all day. So I don't really understand, and this is going to sound like crap here. You can hear it right now, but yeah, that's ridiculous. There's too much going on. But just to highlight to you, that's how much I can add there on if we go down to the Quad Cortex screen now, and I go to add another reverb, and we'll add another spring, and we'll add another reverb and another spring, and another reverb. So I can, looks like I can add spring reverb all day long. But I can't add anything else, which is odd, which is really odd. So if we take a listen to what I got going on there. Yeah, sorry about that. That was kind of ridiculous, but that's kind of what you're getting with the Quad Cortex versus the... Whoop. I'm going to turn off my guitar volume. So yeah, so that's kind of odd, I think. So we'll go back to the standard. But yeah, so I just wanted to highlight that too. So I think everything with that Quad Cortex that I just showed you in the differences with the Helix is maturity. I think the Quad Cortex will get better with that. I think that's an oversight. I don't think it has, it has the power to be able to do what the Helix can do. It has more power than the Helix, so it should be able to do more. And I just think it's a matter of the maturity of the firmware and the algorithms and what they can do. So time will tell, but like I said, the Helix has had a lot more time to figure that one out. So anyway, thanks a lot for watching. We'll be right back with the conclusion. Thanks. Hey everybody, so I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you know when future videos come out. Thanks again, and let me know in the comments if you'd like to see other videos coming out like this in the future, any comparisons or things like that. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of the comparison videos out there. I think a modeler should stand on its own, depending on what you need and your wants and everything. I think based on this video, you guys can probably tell that you can pretty much dial in these reverbs to sound exactly how you want. And really it's apples to apples, really, if you compare, the Helix against the Quad Cortex as far as the reverbs that are there. And I do think the Quad Cortex firmware will be updated eventually, so you get some more functionality, some more different reverbs out of it, and yeah, and be able to just use that DSP a little more efficiently. So anyway, thanks again, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye.